For Salashur, the Federation's most decorated commander, control is everything. He is a legend, a disciplined beta who has conquered star systems. But as his warship approaches a remote academy, an unfamiliar heat surges through him, awakening a truth that shatters his world. He is not a beta. He is an omega, an impossibly powerful one, whose very presence drives alphas into a frenzy. Stranded, vulnerable, and hunted, he finds an unlikely savior in Jax, a silver-haired, cocky stranger with a mysterious past and a smile that promises trouble. Is he a rescuer, or just another predator drawn to the scent of a commander losing control? It was while piloting his warship on final approach to Hertz Royal Academy that Salashur first noticed something was wrong with his body. It was hot. A strange, searing heat swept through him, and his skin prickled as if a fine electric current was crawling over it. His breathing grew ragged, the corners of his porcelain-pale eyes flushing a misty crimson. A muffled grunt escaped his lips. His fingers, resting on the cockpit console, tightened, the pale bones of his knuckles blushing pink. Unbidden, too soft, white cat ears sprouted from his hair. His artificial intelligence, G8901, spoke in its usual mechanical tone. "Commander, I'm here. Analyzing your vitals now." A neural link connected to his brain sent a jolt of electricity through his nerve endings. Salus bit his lip, a deep, aching suma that was both pleasure and pain sinking into his bones. The Federation's highest-ranking commander had never been in such a compromised state. What in the world was happening? "Your glandular hormone levels are spiking. Pheromone concentration is 400% above normal values." Salus's voice was ice. "What nonsense are you spouting? I'm a beta. Betas didn't have glands or pheromones." His AI, who had served him for years, had rarely seen him so out of control. It cross-referenced its databases and offered a conclusion. "Based on your symptoms over the past half-month, irritability, dizziness, fever, loss of appetite, and erratic temper, it appears you are entering." "Who are you calling erratic?" the commander shot back, his face a mask of cold fury despite his pathetic state. G8901 paused. "Your heat." A stunned silence fell over Salus. Absurd. A beta going into heat was as ridiculous as the Emperor streaking through the Federation's presidential hall. The neural link could read his thoughts and tentatively offered another possibility. "Is it possible that you're an O?" Salus raised his eyes and glared at the neural link's physical interface in the cockpit. G8901 corrected itself smoothly. "UT of milk. For your cereal." Salus said nothing. Even though the AI detected the entire cockpit was now saturated with a sweet, overwhelmingly seductive pheromone, it knew to keep its metaphorical mouth shut. It didn't matter. The 8-star system, the commander's homeland and the primary system for ABO genders, would have answers. Abnormal vitals detected. Initiating automatic landing sequence. Landing zone, Hertz Royal Academy, Flight Sector C5. Altitude, 1,000 meters. Estimated landing time, 5 minutes. Salus's skin was flushed and damp, and the cattail that had coiled around his waist was now burning hot. He rasped, "Plan B." G8901 hesitated. "Understood. Initiating emergency descent protocol." In the next second, the silver-white warship tore through the clouds, a soundless rip in the fabric of space, and dropped to the ground in a single, light-speed-folded instant. A deafening boom echoed as rubble flew and the ground trembled. Hertz Royal Academy's C5 flight sector now featured a new, 20-meter-wide crater, Commander Schur's small welcome-home gift. In the flight sector's command tower, Dean Hertz and his students stared, utterly dumbfounded. Even G8901 felt a twinge of AI embarrassment and retracted into its main housing. The disengagement of the neural link sent a fresh wave of sensation tingling across Salus's scalp. His shirt was soaked through, clinging to his waist and abdomen. His delicate collarbones rose and fell with each breath, a picture of disheveled, breathtaking beauty. Salus pressed his hands to his head, forcing the cat ears to retract before he finally opened the cockpit door. Amidst the billowing smoke, Dean Hertz and a crowd of elite students were waiting to greet the commander. But as the cockpit door hissed open, a powerful, sweet omega pheromone diffused on the wind, spreading for kilometers in every direction. The dean's face changed instantly. That scent. A top-tier omega? The elite students, more than half of whom were young, virile alphas, stood no chance against the scent of a pure, unmarked, and currently in-heat omega. It was like dropping a delicious, beautiful cake into a cage of ravenous wolves. "This is bad," the dean yelled. "Ryan, stop them." A green-haired, green-eyed boy in a student uniform immediately stepped forward. He threw a device from his wrist into the air, and a massive, invisible barrier materialized. It was useless. The frenzied alphas were like beasts, their instincts overwhelming all control. They possessed a natural ability to dominate omegas. The green barrier shattered into glittering points of light. Ryan staggered back, his voice urgent. "Dean, you have to do something. If anything happens to the commander at our academy, it won't just be our planet, The entire 8-star system will pay the price. This was the supreme commander of all 8 of the Federation star systems, the Emperor's most trusted leader. Dean Hertz immediately released his own alpha pressure, his aged voice booming. Children. For a moment, the alpha students faltered. Seeing it was working, the dean called out again, "My children." The students turned their blank faces toward him for a second before continuing their march into the smoke. The dean paused. "Hello? Anyone listening?" The other students could only try their best to physically restrain the out-of-control alphas. Salus was not faring any better. The overwhelming wave of alpha pheromones crashed over him, assaulting his already fragile nerves. He grunted, doubling over and sinking to one knee. He could see footsteps approaching. Squinting, he drew the silver falcon pistol from his hip and aimed. He propped himself up, sweat plastering strands of black hair to his forehead, his beautiful, icy face set with deadly resolve. One more step, kids, and I can't guarantee what happens next. The falcon never missed. But the frenzied alphas, consumed by their primal urges, were beyond fear. In their current state, they couldn't even recognize him as the high-ranking commander. He was simply prey. Seductive, fragrant prey. Damn it. Salus would never open fire on innocent students. His expression grim. He looked down at the mecha activation button on his wrist. The Emperor's stern voice seemed to echo in his ears. Since you have decided to leave the core systems, the 5S mecha is no longer yours to command, Commander Sure. I will not take it back. It has already bonded to you as its master. But the moment you use it again, Salus, you will return to the core systems and admit your defeat to me. The power of the 5S mecha was world-shattering. It could level not just these alphas, but the entire academy in an instant. Salus finally looked away from the button, his gaze returning to the alpha student now standing before him. A soft, breathless laugh escaped his lips. All right, I'll play with you for free. He sprang from the ground, a long leg sweeping out and kicking one of the elite students away. But another grabbed his wrist. Salus had already planned his next move, but the instant the alpha touched him, his nerves seized up. An invisible current shot through his limbs and straight to his brain, making him go weak. He quickly shoved the student away, biting his lip to stifle a moan as he stumbled back, on the verge of collapsing. What is this? The alpha regained his footing and began to advance again. But just as he closed in on the commander, a tremendous roar echoed from the sky. A carefree, laughing voice followed as a figure with black mecha wings descended from above. Is that any way to treat a commander, gentlemen? The vast, endless sky was blotted out by a shadow. A slender, wild-looking youth with silver hair descended, his mecha wings slicing through the air, trailing thin wisps of black light, like smoke. If you scare him off, he began, leaping from the air. His black mecha wings dissolved as he landed on one knee, looking up with a smirk. Where am I supposed to find my? His voice was a playful purr. Sweetheart. With a mischievous grin, he slapped his palm on the ground. An invisible wave of alpha pressure radiated outwards in a ripple, instantly shoving all the other alphas back. They stared at him in disbelief. Salus, too, looked up, his expression grave. Such powerful psychic energy. In the next moment, a small Omega in a black uniform, Ryan, stepped in front of him. Ryan stood protectively before the commander, his green eyes cold and serious as he challenged the formidable newcomer. Who are you? I forgot to introduce myself. The youth stood, straightening his black jacket. He gave a casual two-fingered salute. Hello, everyone. I'm your new junior, Jaxia. A beat of silence. You're lying, Ryan retorted, his face tense. There's no one by that name on the academy roster. An alpha this young and this terrifyingly powerful would have been a legend. There was no way they wouldn't have heard of him. Jax gave him a lazy glance, his tone almost chiding. What's the rush? I haven't enrolled yet. I just turned 18 and signed up. The youth's features were a mix of boyishness and wildness, and with his messy shock of silver hair, he certainly looked the part of a rebellious new student. But what kind of new student could take down an entire class of elite seniors? Ryan remained extremely wary. He was convinced the boy was full of it. A moment later, he found himself being lifted and tossed aside into the crowd of alphas. A lazy voice drifted back. Move it, Green Bean. You're blocking my view of my precious sweetheart. Ryan was stunned. You. He instinctively turned, wanting to protect his idol. But he saw the mysterious, terrifying youth sidle up to the commander, looking as shy and bashful as a schoolgirl with a crush. Salus frowned as the boy approached. Though most of the alphas had been subdued, the heat inside him hadn't faded in the slightest. His spine still trembled. Salus propped himself up on an elbow, his cold, exquisite face beaded with sweat. His fingers were already on his falcon pistol. If this boy dared to make a move, he would. Heavens, how could you let the commander sit on the ground? The boy exclaimed, his silver hair seeming to bristle with indignation. That's just awful. Do you think you can get away with anything just because he doesn't complain? After his theatrical outburst, the boy crept closer like a large wolfhound, his face full of concern as he extended his arms. Here, let me hold you. Salus was speechless. So was everyone else. Before Salus could even react, he was lifted off the ground. He was being held by Jaxia. Princess style. Princess style. Salus, who hadn't been this angry even when surrounded by the frenzied alphas, felt a blush creep up his pale cheeks. You bastard, he hissed. Put me down. The boy's arms were a refreshing tide of ocean air, mixed with the crisp scent of mint and salt. It was strangely comforting. Jax's peach blossom eyes looked down at him, a gentle light in their depths. I can't do that, Commander. They're all bad guys, can't you see? His tone was earnest, completely serious. They all wanted to touch you. The other alphas had seen shameless people before, but never this shameless. As if he didn't want the same thing. And who was the one actually touching the Commander now? Let's go. We won't play with them anymore, Jax said, a soft smile playing on his lips. With a whoosh, his black mecha wings unfurled behind him, trailing tendrils of black mist that made the boy's fair features and blood-red lips seem demonic. Ryan immediately ran after them, yelling, "Where are you taking the Commander?" High in the air, the silver-haired youth leaped, holding the cold, beautiful Commander in his arms, creating a strangely timeless and forbidden image. His lazy voice drifted down on the wind. Don't worry, we're just going on a little honeymoon. We'll be back for the freshman enrollment. A honeymoon? The absolute nerve of this guy. Ryan's face turned green with fury. On the very first day of Commander Sher's visit to the 8th star system, he was abducted by a mysterious youth for a forced honeymoon. If word of this got out, the Emperor would have all their heads. But Jax, of course, didn't care about any of that. He only cared about. You don't like black? He asked, looking down. Salus didn't like it one bit. He wanted down, now, but he was completely powerless, trapped in the boy's embrace. The youth's pheromones were like a vast ocean, a cool, gentle wave washing over him, the scent of the damp sea breeze a soothing balm. It was utterly ridiculous. Jax snapped his fingers. The dark wings behind him dissolved, replaced by a shimmering, iridescent pink. A pair of delicate, sparkling fairy wings fluttered, scattering translucent pink cherry blossoms with every beat. This one's prettier, right? He asked with a grin. The boy's smile was dazzling, revealing a pair of small, sharp canines. Salus's face was a blank mask. Did he look like someone who liked pink? A petal landed at the corner of Salus's flushed eye and vanished. Jax stared, mesmerized, so much so that he didn't notice the faint click from beside his ear, the sound of a bullet being chambered. The next thing he knew, the cold metal of the Falcon pistol was pressed against his throat. Salus's eyes were wet and cold, his voice weak, but laced with a clear warning. Now, retract your gaudy 3S mecha, land this instant, and I might make your upcoming stay in the brig a little more comfortable. The wind whistled past his ears, ruffling the boy's rebellious silver hair. The prominent, sexy line of his Adam's apple bobbed against the gun's muzzle. Jax couldn't help but laugh. Commander, you really are ungrateful. The young alpha sounded almost hurt, his gaze dropping to meet Salus's. If it weren't for me, you have no idea how much pain you'd be in right now. Salus had to admit, the kid's scent was comforting. He was most likely releasing calming pheromones for him, an act that was a significant drain on an alpha's energy and not done lightly. Salus closed his eyes, suddenly weary. The dampness at the corners of his eyes was breathtakingly beautiful. He slowly moved the gun, pressing it against the silver-haired boy's chin. His voice was very soft, very faint. Just listen to me, okay? A golden chain shot from Ryan's hand, wrapping around the black-clad, silver-haired youth like a vine. He stood tall and slender, his long legs straight, not bothering to struggle as the chain bound his wrists. He seemed indifferent to everything, only letting out a displeased TSK when he was yanked forward. Alphas were naturally dominant and hated being controlled. The little green-eyed Omega felt a jolt of alarm. Hey, be gentle, the youth drawled, his voice curving with amusement. Ryan's face flushed as if his tail had been stepped on. You shut up, Jax chuckled, finding the situation amusing. But then he felt the Commander's cold gaze and froze, raising his bound hands innocently. It hurts. Salus ignored him, his voice a flat, detached command to Ryan. Take him to the brig. For interrogation. Ryan snapped to attention. Yes, Commander. Salus didn't spare them another glance. The heat that had been soothed was beginning to build again, and he pressed a hand to his forehead in annoyance as he strode away. Even without looking back, he could feel a burning gaze on his back, dangerous and intense. In the medical bay, Salus sat ramrod straight by the window. A full syringe of inhibitor was injected into his glands, and the discomfort in his body finally subsided. Commander Sher, congratulations on your secondary gender presentation. Dean Hertz arrived with the Central Hospital's report, smiling. Salus was silent for a moment, unsurprised. His voice was cool and detached. Is this something to be congratulated for? I'm 24 years old. Normal gender presentation occurred during puberty, around 14. No one presented this late. The dean smiled kindly. But among your feline race, 24 is still just a kitten. He made a small, cradling gesture with his weathered hands. Salus looked away, his voice polite but cold. Please, just call me Salus. Dean Hertz's old eyes watched him gently for a long time before he spoke again. According to the records, every presentation has a trigger. Without some kind of major shock, whether internal or external, no one presents spontaneously. There had been a reported case of a teenage Omega who, after prolonged abuse, suddenly presented as an Alpha. The Dean looked at the famous god of war, his old eyes a safe harbor. Don't worry, young Salus. The 8-star system will help you find your Alpha in this vast sea of people. A long, awkward silence followed. Salus finally stood up, unable to bear it any longer. His slender fingers picked up the medical report, his cool gaze sweeping over the word Omega in the gender field. I don't need an Alpha. He couldn't accept being marked, and no one in this world could mark him. He tossed the report into the trash. The now stable commander was as cold and austere as ever, save for the faint, moist sheen on his skin that gave him a fragile, glass-like beauty. He started for the door. And one more thing. He glanced back, frowning. My name is Salus. Don't call me young Salus again. Dean Hertz stroked his beard and sighed with a helpless smile. When Salus reached the brig, he found the small Omega in the black uniform frantically pressing on his own philtrum, clearly exasperated by the interrogation. Commander, you're here. Ryan's spirits lifted instantly. Salus grunted an acknowledgement and glanced into the interrogation room. How's it going? He asked casually. Ryan struggled for words. You should probably see for yourself. Inside, the silver-haired youth sat on a chair, legs slightly apart, his wrists bound by the golden chain which dangled between his thighs. I really don't have any ill intentions toward the commander. How many times do I have to say it? He said, letting out a lazy yawn in the face of the serious questioning. His tone was listless, almost bored. I'd rather get hurt myself than let anything happen to him. Why do you keep asking me this? Isn't my affection obvious enough? The interrogating senior officer also looked like he wanted to press his own philtrum. He demanded coldly. You attempted to kidnap the commander, and you dare say you have no ill intent. Who says kidnapping the commander is a sign of ill intent? Jax retorted, his lazy eyes lifting to reveal a deep, bottomless glint. You all were bullying my sweetheart. Was I not supposed to step in? The senior officer was momentarily speechless. What happened today was indeed an accident. No one had expected the commander to suddenly present. They wouldn't have dared, not in a million years. Jax slumped back into his sloth-like posture. Don't worry. Even if I were to kidnap him, I'd take good care of the commander. I'd buy him the softest mattress and blankets, fill his bed with stuffed animals, and when he wakes up all gay, I'll feed him a meal I cooked myself, complete with a sweet good morning. The interrogation room door was thrown open with a bang. To the senior officer's astonishment, Salus stood there, a tall, cold figure in a white shirt and black trousers, silhouetted against the light. His exquisite eyes were calm as he glanced at the youth. His voice was cool. A sweet good morning what? Jax froze. He clearly hadn't expected to be caught in the act. He let out a small oh. He was about to speak when Ryan lunged forward and clamped a hand over his mouth, turning to Salus and yelling, Commander, don't listen. It's hate speech. The scene was a chaotic mess. Salus felt a headache coming on. He took over the interrogation. The commander sat opposite, his back perfectly straight, the faint light casting a cool, untouchable aura on his shoulders. He began, Where did you get the 3S mecha? The atmosphere instantly turned serious. Jax looked up, his expression one of innocent confusion. What 3S mecha? Salus's cool, sharp eyes locked onto his. Every 3S mecha in the 8-star systems is documented. There's no point playing dumb with me. Before Jax could speak, Salus continued. Plume, a 3S support-type flight mecha. The final work of the master craftsman Soren before his death. It was last seen in the Imperial Palace on the capital planet before it mysteriously vanished. The implication was clear. A weapon missing from the core systems appearing in the hands of a teenager in the remote 8-star system was suspicious to anyone. This was the real reason he'd had the boy detained. The Federation commander's gaze was cold and scrutinizing, the look of someone long accustomed to power. Jax met his gaze and answered, I found it. Salus's eyes narrowed. Don't lie. Perhaps because his tone was too cold, Jax's own enthusiasm seemed to wane, the rebellious silver tufts of his hair drooping. He looked at the commander. I wouldn't lie to you. The young Alpha's heart was ardent and sincere, completely unguarded from the very beginning. The standoff lasted for a long time. Ryan was frozen, his hands and feet cold with fear. So this is what the commander is like normally. So scary. Salus stood up and walked out, his expression unchanging. Release him. Ryan subconsciously responded. Right, I'll have him executed at once. Huh? What? Release him? Salus didn't elaborate, only issuing a warning to the silver-haired youth as he left. Plume is a support weapon. It has no real offensive power. If you're that conspicuous again, watch your back. With that, he left the interrogation room without a backward glance. Ryan, completely bewildered, went to undo the chains. So the commander was worried about me. The youth's demeanor changed instantly, a lovesick smile spreading across his face. As the commander's #1 fan, Ryan immediately retorted. No, he wasn't. But those words had no effect on the love-struck boy. Jax's eyes crinkled in a smile, his handsome, rebellious features unable to hide his delight. This is our first real meeting since we grew up, and he's already so concerned about me. If we meet a few more times, he'll have to fall in love with me, won't he? As Salas stepped out of the interrogation block, a female doctor was waiting for him. Commander, hello. The doctor greeted him with a respectful and gentle tone. I'm Dr. Amy, a research physician from the system's central hospital. I'm in charge of developing and formulating inhibitors. Salas certainly needed inhibitors at the moment. He nodded. Please have them sent to my room. The doctor smiled and shook her head. Due to your unique physiology, we need to create a custom inhibitor for you. I'm here to personally escort you to the central hospital. Salas's eyebrow twitched, but he calmly asked, to do what? The doctor's smile remained gentle. A blood draw. Salas was silent. As the supreme commander of the 8-star systems and the Emperor's trusted leader, the inhibitor he used in the 8th system had to be flawless. But Dr. Amy also knew that those with feline genetics were often highly sensitive to pain. She looked at the motionless commander, and a suspicion formed in her mind. Could the commander be afraid of needles? She ventured, Are you hesitating? I am not hesitating. Salas cut her off, quickly and calmly. We can go now. The doctor nodded and led the way. Commander, wait for me. A wild, arrogant voice suddenly called out from behind. Salas frowned and turned to see the silver-haired, black-clad youth running towards him with a wide grin. The boy then staged a clumsy trip on thin air, clearly intending to fall into him. Just as the doctor was about to intervene, Salas's voice cut through the air, flat and low. Try it. The silver-haired youth screeched to a halt, stopping barely half a meter away from him. The air filled with the crisp scent of sea breeze, which coiled around Salas, a deliberate, humid caress against the sensitive skin behind his ear. Salas glared at him, then took a step back, creating distance. What is it? He asked. Jax, oblivious, took a step forward. I have something to ask. Salas was silent for a moment, then turned to the doctor. Wait for me in the car. The doctor, though disappointed to miss the drama, went to the medical vehicle parked by the road. Salas's expression was composed. Speak. He assumed it was about the 3S mecha. The tall, silver-haired youth stood before him, then suddenly leaned in close, sniffing near his neck like a puppy. He asked, puzzled, You've already had an inhibitor shot. The milky scent is gone. Salas's face instantly turned to ice. A glacial frost seemed to freeze the air around them. He narrowed his eyes, forcing the words out through clenched teeth. What did you say I smell like? He couldn't bring himself to say the word. Jax flinched and swallowed. No, just a little. Salas's pheromones were unique. Unlike the cloying sweetness of other omegas, his was the scent of camellias on a snow-capped mountain, pure, cold, and untouchable. Yet, up close, there was an underlying milky fragrance that could melt anyone's heart. At that moment, holding him, Jax had wanted to give him everything. Salas stared at him coldly. Kid, I hope you realize something. Jax gazed at his beautiful, icy face, feeling his own heart pound erratically in his chest. He was so close. He managed a dazed, what? Salas's words were merciless. You're an adult now? You're no longer protected by juvenile laws. The unspoken threat was clear. I can get rid of you easily. Try me. Jax was silent. Such a fierce beauty. All right, what I really wanted to ask was, Jax said, why didn't you confiscate my 3S mecha? A 3S mecha was a rare treasure in all 8 systems, coveted by countless people. The Federation's commander was not known for playing favorites. He wanted to know why he had been spared. Jax's eyes burned as he looked at him. Salas replied coolly, I am not its master. How could I confiscate it? Jax said, oh, his mood unreadable. Salas's patience finally snapped. A cold annoyance crossed his face. Back up. Are you trying to push me into the wall? Oh, right. Jax finally registered the lack of space and shuffled back. The youth's mood seemed to lift again. His features were rebellious and striking, his silver hair dazzling. He grinned, revealing small, sharp canines. Salas looked away. If you're done, then get lost. And stay out of my sight. Perhaps because he had been soothed by his pheromones, the scent of the humid ocean air now made Salas feel a strange discomfort. Hearing this, Jax seemed to freeze. As Salas turned to leave, he instinctively reached out and grabbed his wrist. The boy's lips moved. You? Don't you remember me? The young man's palm was scorching hot against the cool, delicate skin of his wrist. Salas frowned and pulled his hand away. He asked without emotion, should I? Jax stared at him, saying nothing. Salas calmly fastened the cuff of his sleeve, his expression elegant and detached. Allow me to remind you, you tactless, reckless little alpha. If I had met you before, you'd have been dead 100 times over by now. With that, Salas turned and walked away without a backward glance. As dusk settled, the silver-haired youth stood alone, hands in his pockets, watching the cold, distant figure until it disappeared from view. He murmured softly to himself, so fierce, Commander. After a long moment, he let out a soft laugh. I like him fierce too. At the hospital, the doctor gently pressed a cotton swab to the small prick on Salus's fingertip. All right, just hold this here. She then took the blood sample to the lab. When she returned, she found the commander still sitting motionless, his profile beautiful and cold, as if the blood draw had no effect on him. The report shows you are in the preliminary stage of your secondary presentation. The heat is not yet intense. Salus lifted his pale, thin eyelids. Not intense. The doctor felt a bit sheepish. The situation earlier today was different. You had just presented, and there were too many alphas present. That's why the impact was so painful. Salus frowned, but said nothing. In about half a month, when your official heat arrives, you will be. The doctor seemed to struggle with finding the right words to say to the high-ranking commander. Very uncomfortable. That was all she could manage. Salus's brow furrowed even deeper. And then, at that point, standard inhibitors will most likely be ineffective, the doctor said. Furthermore, your physiology is quite unique. My recommendation is that you start looking for a suitable alpha. Inhibitor injections were already painful, and the commander himself seemed to have a low tolerance for pain. The doctor had come to this conclusion because a small finger prick for a blood sample was something most people in the 8th system, including delicate little omegas, would simply ignore. Salus tossed the cotton swab into the trash can, his face a blank mask. The doctor suppressed a smile. Prolonged use of inhibitors can also be harmful to your body. So, even just borrowing some alpha pheromones for comfort during your heat would be advisable. Salus's gaze fell on the tiny red dot on his fingertip. His throat moved slightly before he looked away again, his voice detached. Possible, but not necessary. The doctor looked at his snow-capped mountain profile, his long lashes casting a soft gray shadow. She sighed silently. Such a proud commander. 3 days later, Salus finished reviewing the teaching materials, took off his silver chain glasses, and closed the lesson plan. He got up and went to the bathroom for a shower. Steam fogged the glass. He tilted his head back, letting the water run over his fine-boned face, droplets clinging to his hair before falling into the hollow of his collarbone. Half an hour later, Salus sat on the sofa, a hairdryer in hand, fluffing his damp, snow-white cattail until it was soft and full. A knock came at the door. A young Omega's voice followed. "Commander, are you there?" Salus put down the hairdryer and opened the door. He looked normal again, though his collar was slightly open, revealing a hint of collarbone and skin still damp from his shower. "What is it?" The green-haired, green-eyed Omega's eyes widened, momentarily stunned by the sight of the beautiful, freshly showered commander. "Why yes, I have something for you." The young Omega swallowed hard, wondering what it would be like to kiss the commander. He held up a bundle of items. "I'm here to deliver these." "Come in," Salus said. The villa was in a secluded, scenic corner of the academy grounds, newly built by the dean specifically for the commander's visit. The walls were made of a special material that effectively blocked pheromones from escaping. But Ryan didn't smell anything when he entered. It seemed not just anyone could get a whiff of the commander's scent, he thought with a tinge of disappointment. "These are your new ID cards, the keys to your assigned vehicle. And this." Ryan pulled out a transparent box filled with colorful stickers. He grinned brightly. "Pheromone blocking patches. All Omegas at the Academy can get them for free. Dean Hertz invented them himself. He said inhibitor shots are too painful for us little Omegas." Salus glanced at the box. He could make out a few shapes. A pink heart, a green flower, a purple star. He asked, "Do you use them?" Ryan nodded eagerly, touching the little green flower on the back of his neck. A faint, sweet scent of green pear wafted through the air. Salus's expression was unreadable, which made Ryan too nervous to ask if he liked the scent. But then, Salus took a sip of tea and said, "I can smell it. It's fine." Ryan's face lit up. Nothing was better than a compliment from his idol. But then he remembered the last item he had to deliver. His face fell, and he cautiously began. "Commander, Dean Hertz asked me to give you this. It has nothing to do with me, okay?" "What is it?" Salus asked. Ryan pulled a stack of files from behind his back, presenting them respectfully while already starting to back away. "These are the top 10 candidates the StarNet's big data has matched you with, based on pheromone compatibility." Salus's gaze turned frosty. He looked at the Omega who was already halfway out the door. Ryan yelped. "It really has nothing to do with me." He knew how much the commander resisted the idea of an alpha, and he certainly believed that no alpha in the universe was worthy of his brilliant commander. "Jaxia." Salus's eyes fell on the name, and he questioned it aloud. "Ah yes," Ryan said. "That's the silver-haired kid from the other day. I can't believe he's on the list. His compatibility with you is pretty high, 95%. In the database, anything over 90 was already incredibly rare. 95% was practically a match made in heaven. That kid must have some serious luck. As for 100%, that was a near impossibility. It signified a fated pair, soulmates. In a universe of countless beings, they were each other's one and only. A 95% match. No wonder he had found the boy's scent so comforting. It was all because of those damned pheromones. Salus scanned the file. Name, Jaxia. Gender, male alpha. Age, born February 3rd, 2005 of the star calendar, 18 years old, adult. Address, 8-star system, Cinderfall planet, Garden Town, 7th Street, hashtag 13. Physical data, height, 191 centimeters, weight 69. 5 kilograms, chest 100 centimeters, waist 73 centimeters, hips 92 centimeters, thighs 64 centimeters, calves 43 centimeters, length 18. Salus's gaze paused for a fraction of a second before he emotionlessly scanned past it. The next line. Pheromones, sea salt, and mint. So much for privacy on the Starnet, Salus thought coldly. Ryan leaned over, chin in hand. This kid's got a great body. Slim waist, long legs, nice butt. Salus shot him a look. Nothing, Ryan stammered. But Commander, he's not good enough for you. Salus raised an eyebrow. Ryan pointed at the file. He lives on Cinderfall planet, the most chaotic planet in our entire system. And in the slums, no less. I've been there on a mission. A hut made of scrap metal with a roof barely counts as a home there. How dare such a poor kid even dream of their commander? The commander would never marry down. That has nothing to do with me, Salus said coldly. Take this pile of garbage away. As he picked up the files, his natural perceptiveness made him pause. There are only 9 here. You said there were 10. Ryan, startled, quickly explained. There is one more, but our academy doesn't have the clearance to view his file. Ryan's explanation was vague, but Salus understood. His eyes narrowed, a coldness spreading in their depths. There was only one person whose file the Starnet couldn't access. The one who sat enthroned above the galaxy. The Emperor. Salus tossed the files back onto the table. By the time he looked up, the little Omega had already vanished. Salus sighed, his gaze falling back on the scattered papers. Among them, one photo stood out, impossible to ignore. A silver-haired youth with a dazzling smile against a red backdrop. His rebellious silver hair was a messy shock, and he was winking playfully at the camera. Salus couldn't bear to look at it. What is this nonsense? He muttered under his breath. Half a week later, it was freshman enrollment day at Hertz Royal Academy. The new students swarmed at the school gates like ants. Seniors watched the spectacle from the balconies of the classical-style castle. Wow, so many people, one remarked. With the commander here, enrollment is 10 times what it usually is. Too bad he's only teaching the freshmen. Hey, is it because of what happened at the landing zone that he won't teach us? Another senior spoke sternly. Shut up, don't you dare bring that up. Dean Hertz has forbidden anyone from discussing it. All the alphas who were there got locked in solitary for a week. They were just released today. Serves them right, the first senior muttered. A man like the commander. No alpha was good enough for him. They couldn't even imagine who would have the guts to try and mark him. Hey look, what is that thing? What? The seniors leaned over the railing, their gazes drawn to one person. Or more accurately, to one head. Amidst a sea of black hair, a wild shock of silver stood out. And on top of it all, 2 tufts of hair were styled into a ridiculously flashy silver. Heart. The seniors were speechless. Seriously, who is this showboat? Amidst the throng of new students, Jack Sies stood with his hands in his pockets, a green leaf dangling from his lips. He was wearing a black jacket and seemed completely unbothered by the stares his unique hairstyle was attracting. Dude, that's a pretty special hairstyle you've got, an alpha boy finally said, clapping him on the shoulder. Jax gave a lazy, just a little trick to get the commander's attention. The boy's eyes widened. You like the commander too? Jax turned his gaze on him, his long eyes glinting with a deep, inscrutable light. After a moment, he said languidly, like is too shallow a word. It was the first time Liu Yao had ever encountered such an intense, yet nonchalant and dangerous, gaze. Even though they were both alphas, he felt an immense pressure. He managed a confused, huh? Jax's lips curved into a slight, enchanting smile. He said without a trace of shame. To be precise, I won't marry anyone but the commander. After 3 seconds of silence, Leo finally said, Wah. His mom was right. The outside world really was a strange and wonderful place. Even alphas were thinking about getting married off these days. Look, man, I can tell you're strong. I was hoping we could team up for the freshman trials. That's why I'm giving you some advice, Leo said, leaning in and covering his mouth. You should tone it down a bit. Don't go showing off in front of the commander. Jax's eyebrow rose with interest. And why's that? I heard that a few days ago, an alpha senior snuck into the commander's rest area late at night, trying to mark him after he presented. As Jax listened, his eyes darkened. Leo whispered conspiratorially. The commander knocked out 2 of his teeth and hung him from the clock on the teaching building to swing in the wind all night. Hearing this, the gloom in Jax's eyes vanished. A low, magnetic laugh rumbled in his chest. How do you know so much? Leo said proudly. I have an inside source, of course. Jax raised an eyebrow. An inside source, and you still need to team up with me? The blunt question made Leo falter. After a moment, he threw his hands up in defeat. My aunt works in the cafeteria. But if you team up with me, I guarantee she'll never skimp on our portions, he declared with gusto. We'll get 2 chicken legs every time. Alphas were a hot commodity during the freshman trials. Their natural advantages made them stand out among the betas and omegas. Some of the weaker omegas nearby were already releasing sweet pheromones, seeking an alpha's protection. Leo hadn't expected his chosen partner to be so hard to win over. But at the mention of double portions and 2 chicken legs, the silver-haired youth's eyes lit up instantly. He extended a hand solemnly. Deal, my friend. Leo was speechless. So his appeal as an alpha was worth less than 2 chicken legs? The clock at the top of the academy tower struck 10. 3 heavy chimes echoed across the campus, and the freshman plaza fell silent. Freshman enrollment is now closed. Students who did not arrive on time are automatically eliminated. After the announcement repeated 3 times, an old man in a black robe, leaning on a cane, stood on the stage. His old, golden eyes gazed gently at the crowd. Children, welcome to Hertz Royal Academy. I am your dean, Bronson Hertz. A low murmur rippled through the students below. Dean Hertz was widely respected. Throughout the 8-star system, gender discrimination was rampant in most academies. While omegas were protected by law due to their rarity, they were at a disadvantage in a world that valued strength, and most military academies only accepted alphas. But Hertz Academy never had gender restrictions for admission. The dean had famously declared that gender should never be a barrier to any student's education. However, the shouts that followed the initial murmur were all for one person. Commander! 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 Dean Hertz was left speechless. From behind him, a slender, cool figure walked onto the stage. A crisp white shirt outlined his lean, straight posture. A golden academy badge was pinned to his chest. His profile was like a perfectly sculpted piece of porcelain, meticulous and radiating a stern detachment. He merely glanced at the crowd below. The entire freshman plaza erupted into a frenzy. Commander. It's really the commander. A living, breathing commander. No matter how wild the crowd became, Salus's expression remained unchanged. See, Leo said, sighing at the chaotic scene. Don't even try to get the commander's attention. He won't bother with mortals like us. He was like a god on high. A single glance was enough to drive his followers mad. Jax narrowed his eyes, his gaze fixed on the figure on the stage. That's because they're not good enough. Leo sighed. You're impossible. Jax ignored him, straightening his jacket and adjusting the small silver heart on his head. He turned to Leo. Is my little heart straight? Leo instinctively looked at the hair heart. Yeah, it's perfect. Jax smirked. Good. For some reason, Leo suddenly had a very bad feeling. Before he could ask, the alpha beside him shot his hand into the air, his gaze fixed boldly on the stage as he shouted. Commander, do you remember me? Leo froze. A 191-centimeter tall youth was already conspicuous in a crowd, not to mention his dazzling silver hair. All the freshmen turned to stare at him. Who's that guy? Why would the commander remember him? Just another attention seeker. He even got a special hairstyle. So calculating. On the stage, Salus lifted his gaze, his eyes landing on the source of the voice. The brilliant silver-haired youth was looking at him, a dazzling smile on his face. He always seemed to love being the center of attention. Salus's eyes lingered on the little heart-shaped tuft of hair for 2 seconds before he coolly looked away. He didn't say anything, seemingly not wanting to embarrass the boy. But his indifferent reaction drew snickers from the crowd directed at the showboat. Leo tugged on his sleeve. Are you crazy, man? How could the commander remember you? That's enough. Put your hand down. But Jax didn't move. He tilted his head, his voice ringing out again, full of feigned confusion. You really don't remember me? Commander. The youth tried to jog the commander's memory with an innocent tone. Last week, by the flower garden outside the hospital, there was a bald patch of grass, and you were squatting there, crying with red eyes while sucking on your fingertips. He added with a dramatic sigh. Oh, it was so pitiful. I even gave you a tissue and some strawberry milk. The plaza, filled with thousands of new students, fell into a dead, profound silence. The air seemed to freeze solid. Everyone stared at the ground, at their own noses, at anything but the stage, remaining utterly silent. That kid had guts. Leo felt like he needed to be on oxygen. Why, oh why, had he decided to team up with this alpha? This reckless disregard for his own life. This rush to meet his doom. He was not worthy. He stole a glance at the stage. The commander, dressed in his white shirt and black trousers, stood tall, looking down at a certain silver-haired youth with an expression of pure ice. You're done for. You are so done for. A bone-deep chill made Leo shiver. He tried to subtly shuffle away from the alpha, whispering, the commander is going to knock out all your teeth and hang you, naked, from the clock tower for 10 days and 10 nights. Yet, the fearless alpha even had the audacity to ask, will the commander be doing the stripping himself? This love-struck fool was beyond saving. Jax looked up, meeting the commander's frigid gaze. He tilted his head, a gesture of feigned innocence, the little heart on his head wobbling. It really was him, although he didn't look quite the same now. But the soft curve of his lowered eyelashes was identical, a sight that made one's heart ache with tenderness. And that fleeting glimpse of a fluffy, white tail tip. Jax couldn't help but swallow. Salas seemed to know exactly what he was thinking. His eyes narrowed, flashing a message as clear as day. You have no attachment to this mortal world left, do you? Jax had a sudden moment of clarity. He executed a perfect 90-degree bow. My apologies. I must have mistaken you for someone else. Everyone was speechless. This kid. He even dared to tease the commander. Did he have a death wish? But surprisingly, the commander said nothing. The tense standoff ended in cold silence. Then, a magnetic, pleasant voice, like the chime of cool jade beads, fell over the crowd. The freshman entrance exam begins now. Any student who fails to pass through the illusory forest within 1 hour will be eliminated. Salas's cold gaze settled on a particular spot in the crowd, his words seeming to be directed at one person, and yet at everyone. Good luck. As the commander's words fell, the students snapped out of their stupor, all thoughts of the earlier drama gone. The illusory forest. Everyone applying to Hertz Academy knew of the illusory forest. It was a forbidden area in the mountains behind the academy, crawling with ferocious beasts. They were making the freshmen go through that? Such a high-stakes game right from the start. It's normal. Enrollment is huge this year. They can't accept everyone. An alpha sneered, looking at the dense crowd with disdain. Everyone, Ryan, the green-eyed Omega in the black uniform, announced from the stage. Do you see your numbered badges? If you encounter a danger you can't handle, crush it. The beasts will no longer attack you. He held up his own 001 badge and crushed it easily. On the large screen, the number 001 went dark, indicating elimination. Otherwise, he said, his smile soft as he deliberately looked at a certain showboat. Screaming for your mommy won't do you any good. The showboat in question looked down at his own badge, number 191. Many students around him were carefully clutching their badges, terrified of breaking them. Jax held his up, his peach blossom eyes softening as he looked at it. He then brought it to his lips and gave it a light, gentle kiss. Don't worry, I won't let you break. On the stage, the little Omega's face was turning green. He forced a smile and pointed a slender finger at the ancient clock on the teaching building. Allow me to remind you all, the countdown has already been running for 3 minutes. Aren't you going to get a move on? A wave of panic swept the crowd. Go, go, go. Leo broke into a run. Then, struck by a pang of conscience, remembered his reckless, shameless partner. Dude. Before he could finish, a figure blurred past him, leaving an afterimage, and vanished into the distance. Leo was left standing there. Hey, wait for me. In an instant, the crowded freshman plaza was empty. Ryan returned to the control room, tablet in hand. That silver-haired alpha is completely out of control. Commander, you shouldn't have let him off so easily. The Omega grumbled. The moment he started spouting that nonsense, you should have just disqualified him from the project the feed. Salas cut him off with 2 sharp words. Oh right. Ryan obediently projected the multi-angle views of the illusory forest to monitor the exam. He thought to himself that the commander was truly impartial, never abusing his authority. But fabricating lies like that was a serious offense. Could it be that what the kid said was actually? He suddenly remembered that the commander had, in fact, gone to the hospital last week for a blood draw, tests, and an injection. Ryan looked at the commander's exceptionally cold and beautiful profile and clapped a hand over his mouth. No, it couldn't be, right? Young Ryan, are all the beasts secured? Dean Hertz's smiling voice interrupted his thoughts. Secured, sir. We only left out 10%. To avoid any fatalities, most of the beasts had been caged. But 10% was more than enough to give the freshmen a hard time. The exam was divided into 3 stages. The first, speed. The second, intelligence. The third, combat. The first stage had no real danger, just a jungle obstacle course. The goal was to avoid all obstacles and reach the finish line. But the entrance to the next stage would close for 5 minutes after every 100 students passed through, meaning everyone else had to wait anxiously. That was close. I was the last one in. Leo, his luck maxed out, made it to the second stage and found that almost all 100 students there were alphas. Their natural physical superiority gave them an edge. I told you Omegas shouldn't even be in this exam. See, not a single one made it. An alpha scoffed. He then strode confidently into the second stage. But what awaited him was an incredibly difficult star math problem. The alpha stared dumbfounded. He scratched his head for 5 minutes, unable to solve it. It wasn't until another person entered the cubicle, an Omega with curly auburn hair, that things changed. The Omega glanced at the problem and quickly solved it. Before moving on, he looked back at the stunned alpha. The Omega smirked. The answer is 250, meathead. The alpha was speechless as the screen refreshed with a new problem. This scene repeated in cubicles all around, and the sound of frustrated alphas cursing filled the air. Salas leaned back, crossing his arms. You are quite lenient with the Omegas, he remarked to Dean Hertz. Such a scene was rare in any star system. Nowhere else showed such tolerance for Omegas. Even the dean's most capable assistant was just a slightly dorky little Omega. Ryan, overhearing, protested, Hey, I didn't get here through connections, Commander. I had the top Thunka score in every exam. #1 in the whole school. Salus said nothing. Dean Hertz just smiled kindly at him. Young. Salus's face remained impassive. Salus. The dean corrected himself with a helpless, smiling shake of his head. It's not leniency, just fairness. Everything in the universe has its own balance, its own cause and effect. That balance should not be easily broken. Once a line is crossed, life changes with it. Just like his own sudden secondary presentation. Is that so? Salus's voice was calm. Commander, sure. I am very happy that you could return to the 8-star system, the dean said gently. Welcome home. The 8-star system was a homeland he had never known, but he had to admit, the past few days had been the most relaxed he'd felt in a long time. But, could you please stop looking at me like I'm desperate for a man? Is it possible that this isn't the reason for my secondary presentation? Salus stated, his tone flat and dry. The dean was silent. Just then, the display screen beeped. Ryan announced in shock, the first person has passed the 3rd stage. Only half an hour had passed, and the first person to clear all 3 stages had already emerged. On the leaderboard to the right, the number 1 slot flashed gold, 191. The main camera focused on the silver-haired youth in the jungle. Before him, a ferocious beast lay on the ground, its life fading, its neck twisted at an unnatural, brutal angle. Ryan covered his mouth. He's so fast. A single, fatal blow. Their attention had been split across various feeds, but they had been keeping an eye on this scene. They just hadn't expected the boy to act with such swift, decisive force. Before they could even shift their focus, it was over. No tools, just his bare hands against the beast. Even Ryan, who was used to seeing hunts, felt a shiver of fear. He hesitated. So, does this mean he's the first to pass? There were no more obstacles in front of number 191. The finish line is just a short distance away. Who said killing one beast means he's past the 3rd stage? Salus's gaze was fixed coolly on the screen. He gave the order without a change in expression. He hasn't reached the finish line. Release 2 more. Block his path. Ryan's eyes widened. He turned to look at Dean Hertz. The dean just shrugged helplessly, as if to say it was out of his hands. A thrill of excitement shot through Ryan as he pressed a button, releasing 2 more beasts. High up in a tree, Leo watched Jax kill the beast with his bare hands. Whoa, dude, he called down, showering him with praise. You're incredible. It wasn't that he was too scared to come down, but fighting barehanded was a bit much. Jax ignored him. Come on down. This path is clear. Really? How do you know? Jax casually massaged his wrist. This path has the fewest footprints, the grass is clean, and also, this flower. He plucked a small, pale yellow flower, blew it clean, and tucked it behind his ear, planning to look his best when he saw the commander. It's called a starbell. Tigers hate the smell. Hearing this, Leo scrambled down the tree, grabbed a handful of the yellow flowers, and started sticking them in his hair. My man, you're my best. Ouch, ouch, Leo yelped as he was kicked. What was that for? Jax had yanked all the flowers from his hair. You're not allowed to wear them. Leo looked at the pristine, silver-haired alpha, with his hair hard and the little yellow flower behind his ear. Who could possibly outshine you anyway? That neck snap thing you did? No one can compete with that. Anyone who saw that would just run away screaming. Was it cool? Jax asked, tilting his head. I can kill them in even cooler ways, but I don't want to see blood today. He sniffed the collar of his jacket. Don't want to get the smell of blood on me. The commander wouldn't like it. Leo was completely speechless. In the span of half an hour, he had understood. This alpha wasn't joking about wanting to marry the commander. He was dead serious. Let's go, let's go. Leo was anxious to move, afraid of attracting more beasts. The ones here were savage, snarling, and pouncing on sight, like the 2 that were currently running towards them. What the hell? What are those? He scrambled back. You said the path was clear. Jax's expression sharpened. Get back. Leo was already as far back as he could get, but he still asked, can you handle them? There were 2 of them. Jax tilted his head back, dodging a lion's gaping maw, and kicked it hard. He was about to ask, you want to take the other one? But Leo had already answered for him with a thumbs up. You got this. The young alpha was a blur of motion, his slender frame agile as he dodged fatal blows while delivering devastating ones of his own. The beast let out a piercing shriek. He drew back a fist and, with a cold sneer, smashed it into the lion's head. The hem of his black jacket flew up, revealing a sliver of a taut, lean waist, the lines of his abs tightening before disappearing into his black pants. On the monitor, the screen clearly recorded how the youth fought off 2 beasts at once, taking them down with incredible speed. But this time, blood was drawn. He looked down at the bloodstain on his sleeve and frowned slightly. Dean Hertz spoke, his voice full of meaning. This young friend seems to be no ordinary person. Salus's face was a cold, non-committal mask. Anyone who can wield a 3S mecha is no ordinary person. The beast tides had only ended 20 years ago. The galaxy was still in turmoil. It was normal for powerful individuals to be scattered across minor planets. This is too easy for him, Salus said, his voice flat. Ryan couldn't tell if the commander was holding a grudge or genuinely testing the silver-haired kid's true abilities. He watched as the commander's elegant, fine-boned hand reached out and pressed the button again. Continue. Ryan's expression turned to one of pure horror. Salas frowned slightly. Is this too much? No, that's not. Ryan stammered, his words tumbling out. You can't press the button a second time. This time it won't be two, it'll be. Salas's expression changed. How many? He didn't need Ryan's answer. On the screen, in one of the containment areas, every single cage door flew open with a series of loud bangs. Dozens of ferocious beasts charged out, thundering towards the youth closest to the finish line, making the very ground shake. Ryan's voice trembled as he finally answered. F50. At that horrifying number, even Dean Hertz was stunned. Oh dear, can the young man handle this? The dean usually maintained a strange sense of calm, but Salas was clearly no longer calm. He stared coldly at the screen, then pushed his chair back and strode out of the room without a backward glance. If he doesn't die, it's his lucky day? Dean, Ryan asked, staring at the screen and trembling. Do you think he'll crush his badge? As the 50 beasts were released, the forest floor trembled, and the number of students crushing their badges skyrocketed. The numbers on the main screen were extinguishing one by one, like streetlights in a blackout. Would the kid be one of them? Dean Hertz looked at the youth in the depths of the forest and stroked his beard with a small smile. I'm guessing he won't. Ryan suddenly remembered the scene in the crowded plaza, the boy's gentle kiss on his badge, as if he were promising it. Don't worry, I'll protect you. This is the only way I can get to him. He guessed not, too. Ryan clutched his head and ran after Salas. Aya, save me. What is happening? Please don't let that silver-haired kid die. When Ryan finally reached the scene, breathless, he witnessed a sight he would never forget for the rest of his life. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the jungle canopy, illuminating a scene of carnage. Dozens of beasts lay strewn across the ground, their blood pooling on the forest floor. In the center of this field of bodies, the silver-haired youth was on one knee, his head bowed against the commander's straight, slender shoulder. Even his silver hair was dripping with blood. Salas had arrived just in time to shoot the last beast that had been fighting the boy. The youth, who had been in a berserker rage, suddenly went still. He turned his head and looked at Salas. His eyes still reflected a crimson haze, and blood dripped from his fingertips, making it impossible to tell if it was his or the beast's. He tried to take a step, but faltered. The boy's lips curled into a faint smile. A strand of silver hair was plastered to the corner of his eye, his cheeks smeared with drying blood. He looked both wretched and strangely sexy. You're trying to kill me, aren't you? His every breath seemed tinged with the scent of blood. Salas stared at him coldly. Receiving no reply, Jax's peach blossom eyes drooped with disappointment. Seemingly having exhausted all his strength, he staggered and fell forward. A faint scent of white camellia enveloped his senses. An arm wrapped around his waist, and he collapsed into a cool, clean embrace. Salas hadn't expected the boy to be so heavy, and the momentum pushed them both down to one knee. His expression was one of cold annoyance, but then a damp cheek brushed against his neck. Salas froze. The sensation of damp skin against his own sent a shiver of sensitive discomfort through him. His eyelashes trembled. Before he could speak, the boy's hoarse, low voice sounded by his ear. You don't want to see me, do you? His breathing was shallow, as if he didn't even know what he was saying. I know. I made you unhappy. I just want you to remember me. Salas kept his eyes lowered, silent. A moment later, something was pressed into his hand. The youth leaned quietly against him, his breathing soft, and even as he passed out. Salas lifted his gaze to the dumbstruck Ryan standing opposite them. He frowned, his voice slightly hoarse. What are you standing there for? Get him to the medical bay. Salas lifted his gaze to the dumbstruck Ryan standing opposite them. Oh, right. Salas was covered in the cloying, metallic scent of blood. He had always been fastidious about cleanliness and had rarely been in such a state. He let out a deep breath and looked down at the object in his palm. A badge. Number 191. The air in the medical bay smelled faintly of antiseptic. The female doctor gave the unconscious Alpha a full examination. It's just blood loss leading to exhaustion and a temporary coma. Aside from the external wounds, there are no serious injuries. Salas gave a curt nod, saying nothing more. The doctor then began to treat the wounds on the boy's hands. Salas didn't leave, standing to the side and watching quietly. It seemed the Alpha's innate bloodlust was strong. His attacks had been vicious, and the boy's fine-boned hands were covered in cuts and bruises. Salas couldn't help but recall the scene he'd witnessed. The boy had been clearly outmatched, yet he had fought with a desperate ferocity, a completely reckless style of combat. And he had never once considered crushing his badge to save himself. Why, then, had he pressed it into his hand at the end? Ooh, ouch. Salas glanced at the wincing Omega beside him. Ryan was staring intently at the doctor's work, his face scrunched up in a pained expression. Are you the one who's injured? Ryan pouted. It just looks painful. The doctor finished dressing the wounds, wrapping them in gauze. She smiled warmly. He seems like a promising one. She was referring to the boy on the bed. Why do you say that? Ryan asked. He's on the thin side and anemic. To be able to last that long in his condition shows incredible willpower. The doctor smiled again and left with her medical tray. Ryan was incredulous. Anemic. Anemia was usually a sign of malnutrition. Ryan stared at the fairly large youth on the bed, completely baffled. If he's malnourished, how is he a head taller than me? Ryan exclaimed, indignant. Salas frowned. If you're going to be loud, get out. Ryan finally remembered the boy was still unconscious and belatedly covered his mouth. He then noticed the commander's gaze had been fixed on the silver-haired kid for a long time. Salas's expression was placid as he looked at the unconscious youth. Compared to his usual arrogant and flamboyant self, he looked rather quiet and well-behaved now. His face was nestled softly in the pillow, his long lashes resting on his cheeks. The little heart-shaped tuft of hair was a mess, and even the yellow flower behind his ear had wilted, like a little silver-haired puppy. The thought came to Salas, unbidden. Commander, are you worried about him? Ryan whispered from beside him. Salas shot him a look. He coolly averted his gaze, his face unreadable. What do you think? Ryan immediately decided he didn't dare to think, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just seen a hint of gentleness in the commander's expression, and maybe even the ghost of a smile as he looked at the alpha. Commander, this was my fault. I'll watch over this key. Ryan swallowed the last word. This junior. Salas's voice was calm. It had nothing to do with you. I was the one who pressed the button. He was always one to separate public and private matters, and he would never use his status to deny his mistakes. Ryan hesitated. So, are you going to? Salas's expression shifted slightly. He turned and started for the door. Notify me when he wakes up. No matter how impartial he was, there was no reason for him to stay here, waiting for this silver-haired puppy to wake up. As dusk fell, the heavy curtains in the room blocked out the fading light. Jax groggily opened his eyes and came face to face with a pair of large, glowing green eyes staring at him in the dark. He slowly closed his eyes again. He had to be dreaming. Ryan's gruff voice broke the silence. If you're awake, stop playing dead. Recognizing the familiar voice, Jax opened his eyes again, feeling something restraining his wrist. In the dim light, he said, You may have my body, but you'll never have my heart. Ryan was confused. Had this alpha hit his head? What was he babbling about? Under the Omega's baffled gaze, Jax solemnly declared his loyalty. In life, I am the commander's man. In death, I will be the commander's little ghost. Ryan was speechless. Salas had washed away the disgusting scent of blood and changed into clean, casual clothes before returning to the medical bay. As he approached the room, he heard Ryan's frantic voice from inside. Shut up, shut up, shut up. You are not the commander's man or his little ghost. The little Omega had the boy by the neck and was shaking him furiously. The commander is not yours, and you are not his. The dizzy alpha didn't forget to raise an eyebrow in defiance. Yes, I am. My heart, my liver, every organ in my body belongs to the commander. Salas was speechless. He turned on his heel to leave. Just then, an expected voice called out from behind. Commander. The newly awakened puppy's tail was practically wagging at the sight of him. Help me, Commander. Salas stood still. The moment he heard the word Commander, Ryan instantly released his grip on the silver-haired youth and snapped to attention, looking perfectly behaved. The entire motion was as smooth as silk and took less than a second. He thought to himself, perfect. Cough, cough. Ryan then watched in disbelief as the alpha, who had been defiantly provoking him just a second ago, suddenly seemed to lose all his strength. He pressed a hand to his forehead, looking as fragile as a wilting flower. I'm so dizzy, Commander. Ryan's jaw dropped. Jax met the Omega's wide, astonished green eyes and gave a small, innocent blink. He then turned his head away fearfully. He just grabbed me by the neck. Why would he do that, Commander? Ryan nearly exploded with rage. Did he really think his acting was good? It was atrocious. It was a tired, old damsel in distress routine that even bad soap operas had stopped using. But his idol had clearly never watched a soap opera. Salas cast a cool glance in his direction. Ryan. Hearing the commander say his name for the first time, the little Omega was both thrilled and shy. He responded with a loud, clear, Yes, sir. Salas continued. I told you to watch him, not strangle him. Ryan's face fell. Jax was secretly gloating, trying to suppress a grin, when the commander's attention turned to him. Jax froze. The cool, detached commander clearly didn't play favorites. You want to know why he did that to you? Do you really need to ask? Jax was speechless. He didn't dare to make a sound. Having successfully dealt with the two childish boys, Salas turned to Ryan with a proper task. Dean Hertz is looking for you. Take the freshman admission list to him on your way. Ryan nodded immediately. Yes, sir. As the dean's capable assistant, the little Omega took his orders and immediately dashed off. Ryan paused at the door. Jax suddenly remembered something and called out. Wait. Yeah. Jax licked his lips and asked with feigned nonchalance. I admitted. Ryan couldn't have missed his true intention. A feeling of smug satisfaction washed over him. He pressed a hand to his forehead theatrically. Number 191? I can't seem to remember. Jax's mouth twitched. Payback was swift, but he genuinely wasn't sure. He had been the closest to the finish line, but he hadn't actually reached it. And his badge was no longer in his possession. Even though I prepared the list myself, was 191 admitted? Ryan shook his head in mock confusion. I don't know, my head hurts. Gotta go. And with that, the little Omega skipped away. Jax really wanted to throttle him. The room fell into a brief silence. The silver-haired youth on the bed was quiet for a moment. Then he ripped the 4 needle from his arm, swung his legs over the side of the bed, and started for the door. Stop. Salas frowned. Where are you going? Jax paused, then turned back, a lazy, careless smile on his face. Just stepping out. I'll be back soon. The youth's wild, handsome eyes crinkled. Don't miss me too much, Commander. Salas asked him. Why don't you ask me? The badge was in his hand. No one knew the answer better than he did. In fact, he was the one who would decide his fate. The smile on the youth's face seemed to stiffen. He stood there quietly for a long moment before looking down with a small laugh. No, I'd rather not. He didn't want to ask. He didn't dare to ask. He had hope, but he was afraid of that hope being crushed, so he didn't dare to hope at all. He had handed over the badge himself. He would accept whatever the outcome was, with no regrets. It was just that, when the time came, it would hurt a little. The youth's lean, strong arm hung at his side, the needle mark from his rough treatment beating with a few drops of blood. He didn't seem to notice, or perhaps he didn't care. Salas quietly looked away, saying nothing more. Go on. The tall youth in front of him seemed to startle at his suddenly cold tone. He pursed his lips, but still managed a small smile. Okay. Then he turned and ran out of the room. The evening wind ruffled his messy silver hair. He hadn't bothered to grab a jacket, and the black t-shirt he wore was wrinkled. The bandage on his hand had come loose as he ran, trailing behind him like a long, white ribbon. He looked a bit wretched, a bit like a beautiful, battle-worn soldier. It was a sight that made passing upperclassmen turn their heads. Whoa, if I tried that look, would I be that cool? Honestly, you'd probably look like a stray dog. Never mind. As a classic extrovert, Jax could normally strike up a conversation with a dog, but right now, he was too anxious to care about anything else. He ran all the way to the freshman plaza. The admission list had just been posted, and a crowd was packed in front of it. He frowned and, ignoring his injured hand, began to push his way through. Hey, man, you're back already? A familiar voice and a familiar pat on the shoulder made Jax turn to see Leo. Are you all healed up? Leo asked in surprise. Yeah, Jax said dismissively. Seeing him pushing through the crowd, Leo was confused. What are you doing? Checking the rankings, Jax said without turning back. The commander's final, cold glance flashed in his mind, and his voice was heavy. Not sure if I got in. Leo couldn't tell if he was being serious or just humble bragging. Dude, if you didn't get in, the rest of us might as well go collect scrap for a living. Jax stopped. What do you mean? Leo shouted. You're number 1, man. Jax's brow furrowed in disbelief. Just then, the crowd shifted, and through a gap, he saw a familiar number. He had finally seen the ranking. At the very top of the digital screen, in gold. No. 191. See? Why would I lie to you? Leo couldn't help but sigh, thinking back on the exam. The fact that you killed 42 beasts and still managed to turn in your badge? That alone makes you number 1. Turn in my badge? Yeah, Leo said, looking at him strangely. You have to turn in your badge at the finish line to complete the exam. Did you hit your head or something? Leo had been too busy running for his life from the beasts and had barely scraped by in 39th place. Thanks, man. The weight in his chest finally lifted, and a wide grin spread across Jax's face. He clapped Leo on the shoulder. I'll buy you dinner sometime. Leo was speechless. That wasn't how the script was supposed to go, but he still agreed readily. Sure. How about now? I'm starving. Not now? I have to go back and recover from my injuries. Leo blinked. Didn't you just say you were healed? Jax slowly raised an eyebrow, a sly, spring-like smile dancing in his eyes. Nope. It's serious. Meanwhile, Salas was in the medical bay, surrounded by a group of female nurses. Being surrounded and fussed over by a group of young women was clearly not something Salas was used to. He cleared his throat, the tips of his pale ears turning red. Commander, this is a newly developed spray-on inhibitor. Would you like to try it? No, thank you. Please try it. We stayed up for nights developing it, one of the girls said, her large eyes looking at him pitifully. Salas, who had been about to leave, paused. The nurses pressed on. It's more convenient than the patches, and there are no needles. It's super easy. Salas glanced at the small basket filled with colorful little spray bottles. There are all kinds of scents. You can pick any one you like. Salas randomly picked up a small white bottle with a green tea leaf design. He asked, where do I spray it? Just on your face is fine. He closed his eyes. A fine mist settled on his face, tiny droplets clinging to his eyelashes, refracting the light like miniature jewels. The room fell silent. The girls held their breath, afraid to disturb the divine being before them. Then, a gust of wind swept past their feet. When they looked up again, their god had been pulled into a full-body hug. They were all speechless.